Having sports card data at your fingertips is helpful no matter what your budget is. Today I'm showing you how I use price movements and market movers to find value buys in the $10 to $50 range. Let's data dive. Another data dive. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and many times in the comments on the videos of this channel as well as our Sports Card Investor channel, we read that many of you are buying cards not for tens of thousands of dollars, but instead on more of a budget. The majority of the folks out there, in fact, are operating with a very specific budget, and with housing, transportation, and food costs all rising, those budgets for many of us, myself included, are getting squeezed. So even if you're targeting lower dollar cards, being able to quickly identify and target buy low opportunities is far easier using market movers than it is just using eBay or 130 Point. So today I'm doing an entirely organic walkthrough of our data, just talking you through my thought process with different players and different cards and how I go about looking for those opportunities to buy low. So let's jump over to price movements and get right into it. All right, so what I've done here is I've gone to our price movements by card page. You see there's all these different filters here. You can slice and dice the data at different levels depending on what you want to do. And what I've done here at a very high level is I've just put in baseball as a sport and a $10 to $50 price range for average prices. And now I'm on the last 30 days sorted by price change from the biggest negative price change, the biggest decrease, in ascending order to those cards that went up. And I'm just going to go through these cards and just talk you through what I'm thinking of. I'm scrolling and I'm looking at these cards. So the first one, this Jo Adell Topps Chrome Update Rookie Debut Gold Chrome Refractor, numbered to 50. Obviously, when you see a gold Chrome Refractor, a rookie card, numbered to 50, you might be thinking, okay, that's a pretty good buy, usually under 50 bucks. This one was right at $50 on the ending average price. Jo Adell, he's a guy that's been struggling. He's not doing particularly well. I'm not sold on him yet. I think he's had multiple chances now in the big leagues to do really well. And on an Angels team that's loaded in the spotlights on Ohtani and on Trout, it's going to be really hard for Adell unless he starts doing really special things to break through. It's also a rookie debut. I don't love rookie debuts in terms of investment cards. I'd rather go for the actual rookie card and either get a lower grade or pay up, do something else, rather than buying that card. So I'm going to skip that card. The next one on the list, this Ken Griffey Jr., this Topps Traded Tiffany, it's raw. Looking at raw cards from the 80s, in that junk wax era, late 80s, early 90s, I honestly don't touch those, not buying on eBay. Maybe some of you do that. Maybe you've got a good eye for it and it works out well. If I'm buying those cards raw, it's going to be in person at a card show or at a dealer or somewhere else where I can really look at and square up and size up the condition of the card. There's a ton of price volatility in raw cards. For quite a while, we didn't even include raw card data in market movers from that era, simply because you'll see the prices just fluctuate so much depending on the condition of the card. So finding a Griffey card, that Topps Tiffany, from that era, maybe not a bad idea, but it's hard to gauge with the condition, so I'm going to skip that one. A Reggie Jackson PSA 5 Vintage, that's another thing that can see a lot of volatility. From the 70s, a PSA 5, not necessarily a bad deal. I don't go after a lot of vintage myself. It's something I'm trying to get more educated on. At the same time, like I said, a PSA 5, you can see a lot of price fluctuations in that. Maybe $15 for a Reggie Jackson from 1970 is a good deal, but that's not one I'm going to target. Now this next one, this Bo Bichette Gold numbered to 2020 raw, $26 for the most recent price. And this one's been up, starting average around $120. I want to dig into this more. I know Bichette is struggling this year, much to my surprise, to be totally honest. I'm pretty high on Bichette in general, and they're always saying really good things about him with the Blue Jays organization. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm actually just going to click on this chart, this card button, and this is going to take me out to our popular card charts. And I'm going to hide this just so we can see a little bit more of the data. And in general, what I can see, this is showing me the last 30 days. This card has been going down from a high of $120 down, down, down. I want a little bit more context here. I want to know exactly what's going on. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do, this is really important. We look through our data. We're pulling in tens of thousands of transactions every day into our database. Like we've got 650,000, almost 700,000 different cards in our database. Tons of transactions coming in. We do our best to make sure we're removing outliers, and we have a review process for that. I still personally, I always check the detailed results of this card. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look, okay, what's going on? Did this card have something wrong with it? You know, what's the story? You can even click out to eBay and check the card. It's going to take you out, show you the details. You can scroll down and you can see, hey, look, an item here, you know, nothing noted about the condition. So it doesn't seem like there was something wrong with the card. That's kind of what I'm validating. Now, this was a one-off sale. Just because it sold for $26 recently, you know, last month, doesn't mean you can find another one for that price. In fact, it might be really tricky. Instead, what I'm looking for here is like, what's the trend of this card doing? It just hit a really rock bottom low point. Where's the price that I'd be looking for that I'd actually be comfortable buying at? And if I can see that this card's been trending downward, I want to go to the last 90 days and see what the history has been in general. And I can see, okay, back in, you know, February, this card was at $105. It dropped down, it bounced back up, down and up. This most recent sale at $26 is the lowest point in the last 90 days. Even if we zoom out a little bit more to 180 days, okay, I can see this card was trending upward into the new year. But if I go all the way back to December, still this card was at a low point of $36. Now, again, this is a raw card. Condition sensitivity is huge. You have a transaction by transaction thing. There's always like single day of the week. Did somebody have an auction expiring at a weird time? But those are the opportunities that I'm looking for. I'm trying to hone in and laser in on a card that I might want to target that's seeing big dips, and then I'm going to look for a price that I'm comfortable with. And right around this, I'm looking at probably around $50. $50 for this card is a price that I think I'd be pretty comfortable with if I think that Bichette's going to rebound and start heading back in the right direction, which personally I do. That's not financial advice. I'm telling you my honest thoughts and my gut. And so the other thing I'm going to do here is I want to see what's this card been doing in other grades. Let me just look at PSA 10 and PSA 9 and kind of get a sense of what the card's been doing on those. And for the moment, I'm actually going to turn off this raw card. I'm going to go to price changes here, and I want to look at this data and see, okay, looks like a lot of volatility in the PSA 9, not a lot of PSA 10 selling in general, just 50, you know, pop 57 on the PSA 10. So I want to scroll down and look at these stats. So I'm going to go back to the stats box. I can see, okay, PSA 10, $650 that just sold for. Only 57 of them graded as a PSA 10. Maybe I'm looking for that raw card to grade it too, not just for the opportunity to see the raw card itself go up, but if I get it and it's in a good condition, even $119, more recent sale on May 3rd for a PSA 9, I can scoop that card, $50 to grade it with PSA. I'm over break even if it comes back. Or let's say I buy it for $50, I grade it for $50, factor in the shipping costs and everything. Maybe I'm right around break even if it hits a 9. If it hits a 10, I'm knocking it out of the ballpark. This is the kind of, you know, thought process that I'm going into. I'm trying to take into consideration all of these different factors. Now, we know that there are 2,020 of these golds in circulation, so certainly an opportunity for the population to go up on these. There's probably still a fair number of these still in sealed wax, maybe not opened yet. But if I can find a raw one of these around $50, that's what I'm going to do. And so the other thing you can do is you can go out to eBay. You can look for those for sale. You can even come over here. I'll just turn these ones off and turn the raw version back on. And you can scroll down and you can see, here's the ones that are for sale on eBay right now. Sorry, actually, let me look at the raw version. Let's scroll down to that. And here's the raw. Lowest available price right now on a buy it now on eBay, $79.99. You know, not entirely surprising. However, it does accept offers. So maybe I go out to that seller, I offer him $40 because one just sold for $26. We have a negotiation, and if I can get that card right around $50, I feel pretty good about that. So that's what I'm thinking about with this Bichette. Let's just jump back over and look at a few more and think there's, okay, Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman's a guy who's struggling right now, and he struggled last year. His glove is always on. He's always winning Gold Glove awards. He's one of the best fielders in baseball. The big transaction move to Toronto from Oakland, which is in general, I think, a pretty good thing with the Blue Jays being one of the favorites in that division and in the AL to make a playoff push. He's not having a great year. He's been batting between 200 and 220 over the last year, this year, and the power really hasn't been there, but his glove is. The thing I'm looking at here is this is a PSA 10, Pop 302 on his Bowman Draft Chrome Prospects card that sold recently for $10.50. How can you go wrong with a PSA 10 of a guy who's still relatively young? I think he's around 29, so that's not super young. but a guy who's had over a 5 WAR twice in his career. He finished in the top 10 in MVP voting twice on a star-studded team with great opportunity to go into the playoffs. There's so many different ways that this card could take off. To buy it at, let's say, $10 and at a PSA 10, it has really nowhere to go but up. You buy it, let's say you're all in for $15, $17 with taxes and everything. This card has more opportunity to get back up to this $45 range where it was. And if we zoom out, you can see this card was as high as $60, at least on a single transaction, but really hovering around that $40 mark. If he gets hot, that card could definitely go up. If you're especially setting up at shows and dealing in cash, that's a great way to potentially double your money if anything hot happens with Matt Chapman, and you're probably not going to lose much if you buy in at that price point. So that's how I'm looking at that Matt Chapman card. Scrolling down, you've got CJ Abrams. He's an interesting one right now. You see a couple of his cards on here right next to each other, around $32 for his Bowman Draft Refractor in a PSA 10, as well as his Sapphire in a PSA 9. This is a local guy to us in Atlanta. He's out of Alpharetta, Roswell area. High draft pick, still really young. I think he's around 21 years old, and he's struggling. He's really struggling. I think he's batting 182 or something as of today. And, he's filling in basically with Tatis out. He's kind of platooning between second base and shortstop, shifting around with other guys like Cronenworth and Kim. Hard to know what's going to happen with CJ Abrams, but at this price point, for a guy who was drafted like 6th overall, a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and his price is plummeting, I might buy him, expecting that when Tatis comes back, there's a good chance he gets sent back down to the minors, but maybe gets some of that play time that he needs there, some more at-bats with a lower level of pitching competition to get into his groove and hopefully come back up into the bigs and compete in a meaningful way. He's also a guy that, depending on what happens to him and what the Padres do to try to push, could end up getting dealt as like a blue chip type prospect to get somebody else back in return to compete in the playoffs. So maybe a good opportunity with CJ Abrams. Continuing to scroll down, Torkelson, down 71%. It's a raw refractor, not numbered. I don't know if I'd really want to touch that card. Maybe if it was graded PSA 9, I'm a little bit more interested in it. Let's continue scrolling down. And let me just jump to the next page and see if anything here jumps out at me. Okay, this Mookie Betts Sapphire, not a rookie card obviously, but Topps Chrome Sapphire, I think is going to be probably the set from that kind of flagship series that carries well into the Fanatics era that's been like very, very popular, even for base veterans like this. Mookie Betts, he's been struggling. You've got the blue with the jersey match here with the Dodgers, and it's Pop 18. So let's just click out to the popular card charts and see what's going on here with this card. And, not a lot of transactions, really. I bet if I zoom out, there's probably only been a few. Looks like 4 or 5 transactions. But in general, if you could get this card at $42 for a PSA 10, when again, grading cost is more than that right now, which could change any day. We might see a bigger discount from PSA. I don't see a ton of these getting sent in, but again, this is with the Dodgers. They won a World Series. He's a big part of it. He's probably a future Hall of Famer. I'm looking at this card at being very down in price with his performance struggling. Maybe a really good opportunity to buy. You can target these kinds of things by creating saved searches or just keeping an eye on them in general. And finally, let's look at this card here. This Julio Rodriguez Bowman paper prospects. In general, the paper prospects, they don't excite me too much. You've got the Chrome version, which is an upgrade. It's kind of the most basic, highest print run card of all those prospect cards and rookie cards. I don't know how flashy that is, but when I look at this at $14.50, here's what I know. Julio Rodriguez was a guy with a ton of hype and momentum coming into this year. And when people found out he was going to be playing, they were like, oh my gosh, start it now. He's going to be hot. He was absolutely obliterating the baseball in the minors at every level, all the way up until he got the call up to the bigs. He's been struggling this year, especially out of the gate. He's been really struggling. He's hitting like 235, 240. Lately, he's been doing a lot better. He does have 10 stolen bases. He doesn't have a ton of power being generated in the pros yet. So he hasn't found his bat totally, but he's getting heated up. This reminds me a little bit of a guy last year who came up named Wander Franco, who hit 238 in his first 40 games last year, but then hit 357 the rest of the way and was absolutely on fire heading into the playoffs. The Mariners are having, a respectable season so far. We'll see if they can keep that going, and there's obviously a lot of baseball left to play, but a PSA 9 for $14.50. I'm going to click out and I'm going to look at this card. I'm going to say, okay, Pop 448. It's a 2019 rookie. So that was before they really opened the printing presses on this stuff. And I want to see what's the pop count on the PSA 10. It's 1279. In general, I don't always go after a PSA 9 when the pop count is much higher on the PSA 10. You can see this is a card that's had a really high gem rate. So I don't know how much demand there is over time, but again, at that $14.50 mark, where's that card going to go down versus where's that card going to go up when you see that it had potential around the $45 to $50 range. So maybe an opportunity there. That's the type of card that if I saw that for 15 bucks or even 20 bucks in somebody's showcase at a card show, I'm probably definitely making a move on that if I'm dealing with a budget. So that's kind of baseball. I'm looking at baseball that way. What if I want to look at another sport in specific grades? I kind of alluded to something here. I love targeting graded cards in the $10 to $20 range for players who I think have potential to do quick short-term rebounds or who have come down a lot in price. So what I did here is I'm looking at football, specifically PSA 9s, BGS 9s, SGC 9 5s in the value range, $10 to $20, and just over the last 14 days. I also changed my filter on the number of sales to 2 because I want to make sure it wasn't like a fluky sale, but that there's actually like an average, kind of going on there. So I'm scrolling down right away. Alvin Kamara, his PSA 9 optic. I can click that, pop 330. The nice thing here is you can click right out to the PSA site and see what the pop is that's higher than that, 372. Not a super high population card on his optic base card. If you think Kamara is going to have a rebound season at 11 bucks for a guy who's had some incredible seasons and some incredible games, I'd probably take a chance on that card. Scrolling down, this is how you can find any player. I don't even have to say exactly which player I'm looking at. You can kind of pick your poison on these and say, where's the floor on these cards versus where's the ceiling? Do they have an opportunity to go up? The Brady, anything Brady graded in the $15 to $20 range. This 2018 select set has a pretty good following amongst collectors. Maybe that's a good opportunity. Nick Chubb, his base Prism card here at PSA 9 at 14 bucks. So many opportunities, honestly, just scrolling down and looking at these. And this is how you can identify them. This is how you can see which ones are, sort of out there. And then you can pick the players. And specifically if you're targeting, a specific player or two, you can throw that into the filters. So that's what I've done here with Pascal Siakam. He's a guy who actually had a really good season, arguably the best season statistically of his career, but the Raptors struggled, and Siakam was out for a little bit of time. And, he's a solid player. Are people starting to forget about him or lose hope in him? He was a 2016 rookie. We know that as time goes on and we get more separation from rookie classes, fewer and fewer guys stand out as new crops come in and exciting, flashy new guys in the league. But Siakam's a guy that I could see one of two things happening. He either stays for a long time with Toronto, who have an incredibly loyal fan base because they're the only Canadian team. So if you live in Canada, there's probably a good chance you're a Raptors fan. So maybe he builds the kind of like DeMar DeRozan type career there, even though DeRozan obviously ended up leaving. Maybe he becomes one of those kind of players who's just there and one of the actual like greatest Raptors of all times over his duration of his career. Or maybe, depending on what the Raptors do, he ends up getting dealt to a team that's a contender that really wants to compete next year in a couple of years, and we see his prices go up again. So I'm looking for value on this. I know that his card prices have come down significantly. I'm looking at the last 90 days really to see what's happened here. And there's not some bad, there's some cards that aren't bad deals here. PSA 10, lower population on 2016 stuff. Anything 2016 and earlier is going to have much lower print runs in general. $32 for that. I generally gravitate more towards shiny than I do the base cards, just to create a little bit more scarcity with the cards. So if you want the holo raw, 14 bucks for his holo. That's a card that's like, okay, what's the absolute rock bottom floor on an optic holo rookie card for Pascal Siakam? Even now, if he hangs up his career, I would think there's enough Raptors fans, French athlete fans, that type of thing that's going to say that maybe $5. Maybe that card is down to $5 for the foreseeable future. But it's got a lot more upside depending on what happens with him, especially if you get a copy and you can, get it graded with CSG or SGC or one of the companies for a lower price point. These Starbursts are super low population. People don't really realize that. $15 for that card raw. And again, just scrolling down, a BGS 9 or a PSA 9 on these, not bad deals. I would be looking into all of these, checking the charts, seeing what's happening with Siakam's prices, setting price alerts in Market Movers, and then creating my eBay save searches. And that's how I would laser in on this data by a specific player who I know I want to target. This is so much easier using the data laid out in these price movements and then going into the charts to see the history of them than it is trying to do that on eBay or 130 point. So that's what I would do if I were looking at a specific player. But that pretty much does it for this week's video. Thanks for sticking with me and letting me think out loud a little bit, talk out loud. I hope that this was helpful. How do you go about targeting specific cards to buy? Do you have a process that you follow? Let me know down in the comments. And thanks as always to those of you who stop by each week. If this is your first time watching, I'd greatly appreciate if you could like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified every time a new video releases. If you're interested in Market Movers, make sure to visit marketmoversapp.com. Use promo code TRIAL for 7 days free. Until next time, happy investing.